According to abolitionist Frederick Douglass, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Right now, we, in every corner of the world, are faced with so many problems. The problems of climate change, the problems of food shortage, our economic woes, war impending upon us, and so many other calamities just waiting to happen. These are the result of actions of mankind. Why is the world going in this direction? The reason for this is that somehow at the helm of leadership, be it in the business world or in politics and governance, we have chosen and placed the power in the hands of broken mankind. What do I mean by broken mankind? People who are not grounded in correct principles, people who are not competent, people who do not have any integrity, people who are corrupt and greedy, people who are arrogant. There must be something we can do to make this world a better place for its future inhabitants, our children and our grandchildren. So that brings me back to the quote I shared with you earlier in this video. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. We cannot repair this man in whose hands we've placed almost absolute power. But what we can do is we can build children of the future so that they become principle-centered, righteous human beings who will nurse this world and its non-human inhabitants back to an ideal health. Is it possible? Yes, it is. If each one of us took it upon ourselves this very important duty of raising our children right, raising them with love. So this is where we need to look at ourselves, and we need to stop this continuous chain of passing on trends of bad, poor, or even toxic parenting from one generation to another. We're not doing it willfully, but we are doing it actually without even realizing it. The reason is because as children we didn't know that the treatment that we were subjected to in the name of parenting, in the name of bringing us up to be good citizens, were wrong. We didn't know. We had no way of knowing. We still had to accept because we were dependent on our elders to give us a place, a home to live in, food, education, and see to our needs. So we had no way of knowing that the treatment that we were subjected to were wrong. I'm not saying every parent was wrong in the way they brought up their children, or any parent is totally wrong, but all I'm saying is in many cases there were flaws in parenting styles. Okay, so we as the generation now living our lives as adults, okay, so when I say this, I'm referring to everyone who is a parent or a grandparent or about to become a parent, I guess. So the first thing you need to do is, even before you become a parent, look at yourself, identify those poor parenting techniques you have been subjected to, and remove those, acknowledge that they are wrong, cut the chain, okay, and learn how to be good parents to your children. And if your grandparents who have raised adult children without thinking, maybe diluting some of the toxic parenting techniques that you may have been subjected to, well, not passing it on in its entirety, but still did pass on some poor parenting practices onto your children, do admit that it is wrong, do apologize, do correct it so that it doesn't get passed on. Remember that it only takes one generation of parents to raise children to be principle-centered, to be righteous, to have great character qualities, to be critical thinkers, not obedient, to change the world in the future. Yes, change for this world can only come from its future human inhabitants. Good or bad, we, the human species, impact the world the most. So we have to do what is right. Where does this poor parenting come from? Where does this poor parenting practices come from? I think poor parenting practices are rooted in two wrong beliefs. Yeah, the first one is the assumption that as adults we know everything that's good for our children, and therefore we must get them to obey everything that we tell them to do without raising any objections. If they raise objections, when I say they, I mean the children, if our children raise objections against our orders, this means that they are not good children. And the second assumption is that children, inherent in them, have some evil or bad qualities, and if we do not control it, or if we do not use an iron fist to break down this evil, eradicate this evil from the souls of our children, then they are bound to grow up into bad human beings. These two assumptions are the underlying reasons why parents subject children to either physical or emotional punishment as a form of parenting practice. These two assumptions are wrong. Let me explain to you why. We, as parents, are raising our children for a future world that we ourselves have not experienced. So we cannot raise our children to get absolute obedience to every beck and call that we make. We don't own our children. They are children or human beings, little human beings with free will, and they will outlive us ideally. Yeah, that's what we want for them. We want them to outlive us in a world that we will cease to exist, to continue to shout out instructions to them, right? So this assumption that we know it all and we know what's best for them, and everything we do, including toxic or bad or poor parenting, is for their own good, cannot be further from the truth. Okay, so this is something we have to accept. We are raising children to outlive us, to outdo us in a world that's constantly changing, and therefore there will come a time we will be ill-equipped with knowledge and skills to cope in that future world, and it is our children that we want to look up to and learn from at a certain stage, because they will become very competent with the ongoing developments in that future world, and we would not be able to cope with that change, and therefore we have to look up to them, to learn from them. So ideally, from a very young age, we should raise our children with the freedom to individuate, to be themselves. Yes, each child is born with a soul and they are unique and they know a lot, really, even at a young age. So do respect the children and they will respect you back. What we really want is we want children to respect us. And remember, I've told you before, children do as we do, not do as we tell them to do. So the only way to get them to respect us and everyone around them is to model that behavior to them, to respect them and to respect everyone else in plain sight for them to see. Yeah, and I'm not saying pretend it or put on an act, but make it your very character. Okay, treat everyone with respect. Treat everyone like an equal. Be willing to learn from your children and others. Admit your mistakes, apologize, and your children will be able to do the same. Okay, so the first misconception demystified. Okay, now the second misconception is that children have evil inside them. And if not curbed and directed through very authoritative styles, they will end up taking or making wrong choices in their lives. Nothing can be further from the truth. I've talked about our existence on the physical plane, on the energy plane. Children are pure, unadulterated energy when they're born. Everything negative is picked up from physical beings, from the physical world around them. Yeah, they model what we do. They are pure souls. Okay, they are untainted, unadulterated, and there is nothing bad in children. They are beautiful creations. So there is no need to inflict painful punishments on them, either physical or emotional. Just treat them with a lot of love. Hold them dear, close to your heart, like the most precious jewel, and they will turn out just fine. So poor parenting, bad parenting, or even toxic parenting is rooted in these two assumptions that are totally wrong. You don't know everything. Okay, we adults do not know everything. The children have to be allowed the freedom to learn to cope with their world, the freedom to individuate. And children do not have any evil in them, so there is no need to curb their development in the correct way by inflicting punitive measures of parenting on them, be it in physical pain or emotional pain. Let them be, and they'll grow up just fine. And the third pointer, which is not related to demystifying any misconception but stands on its own, is that children do as we do, not as we tell them to do. So whatever it is that you want out of them, make sure you model it at the principal level with congruence across thoughts, emotions, and behavior. I hope this video was useful. Thank you for watching. Have a great week. See you again in another video soon. Bye bye.